I'm going to begin today by doing one of the readings I go back to a lot of times, because to me it's very important what I want to talk about today. Self-care. One of the beautiful things I've learned in recovery is the HALT principle. Rest when you're tired, take a drink of cold water when you're thirsty, call a friend when you're lonely, ask God to help when you feel overwhelmed. Many of us have learned how to deprive and neglect ourselves. Many of us have learned to push ourselves beyond the areas we can. Many of us are afraid the work won't get done if we rest. The work will get done. It will be done better than work that emerges from tiredness of soul and spirit. Nurtured and nourished people who love themselves and care for themselves are the delight of the universe. They are well-timed, efficient, and divinely led. Today I will practice lovingly self-care. I want to continue the series on my spiritual journey. And I want to go to kind of take you on a journey into the days of my seminary days and the priesthood. I said back in the beginning last week that all of us have went through experiences, and your experiences are yours. And that's why I encourage everybody to write their own history and write their own book, because I really believe that every one of us is important. And so I realized in my own journey, it's funny how things happen and they take you in different directions. Here I was at age 14, a naive kid who really didn't know what he was doing in life. And all of a sudden I found out via my mother and via the people that ran the seminary that I was being sent by the diocese to a seminary in Bloomfield, Connecticut. I had no idea at all where the hell Bloomfield, Connecticut was. I found out it was outside Hartford, Connecticut. When I got there, I was scared out of my mind. I was like a young kid, not knowing anything, not knowing where this was going to lead. And I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go back to Camden. But for some reason, I thank God to this day, I was given a very special roommate who kind of befriended me and, believe it or not, helped me to begin to grow up. And I was at that seminary for 3 years, my first 3 years of high school. And really, in reality, I don't know how I got through it, but I did. And then finally, the Diocese of Camden decided to create their own seminary, which today, it was housed where Camden County College is today. It was called Mother of the Savior Seminary. So we were transferred down to there. So I would spend the next 3 years at that particular seminary. And one of the things I've always did in my life, because I'm not really the greatest student in the world, I always kind of occupied my mind, occupied who I was, by staying busy and staying active. And so at that particular seminary, I decided to get involved in the stage and also get involved in acting and building sets for stages, stage plays. I also set up intramural leagues and started all kinds of refereeing. I was always doing something. I think my MO began there. It began from there. We were able to do some beautiful things, and also I guess at a very early age, I learned how to be a little bit of a con artist. Because I was able to talk people into almost anything. We put a play on called Bully Bud when I was in the seminary. And we needed a telephone pole for the mast. So I actually was able to get a telephone pole donated. I also got half a telephone pole donated for the crossbeam. And so I was able to make everything authentic. Because I had this very Italian way of going to people and kind of convincing them that they wanted to give me stuff. And it was totally amazing. So I was amazed at that right from the beginning, that I was able to do things like this and get things done. I was young. But for 3 years, I really thrived on being able to produce and develop things. I also, during that period of time, refereed about 100 basketball games, so I started learning how to be a basketball official. Everything I ever did in my life, I learned by the seat of my pants. Because I'm not a good book learner. So I learned by experience, I learned by things around me. I graduated from there in 1962. I was sent to another seminary. It was Mount St. Mary's in Emmitsburg, Maryland. And when I got there, I always found a way to either raise money, make money, or get things done. So I was there, I decided, there's a clergy place in Philly called Renzetti's, where they actually sell clergy outfits and the cassocks, all that kind of stuff. So I became their salesperson at the seminary. And I got a commission for everything I sold, everything I was able to get that was mailed into the place. And I really thrived on that for the next 6 years. At the same time, though, I basically learned how to get through those 6 years, because I'm going to go back for a second. When I went there in 1962 to finish college in the seminary, and also my theology, they actually taught back then in Latin. Now, of course, I didn't speak Latin, although I took it. So we had to figure out a way to get through the classes. The professors would lecture in Latin, and we had these things back then called horses, where the translations that were given to us from the class before, and we used our translations to get us through. It was almost like it was scary, because we never studied. We basically went to class all the time, from 8 in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And we just heard people lecturing constantly in what we considered a foreign language. Education back then was a lot different than it is today. College was a lot different than it is today. So I got my college degree in philosophy, had some very interesting teachers, especially many of them. I told you the story of Father Pete, who was 92 when he taught me. Beautiful man. And I was time with him on his deathbed. And this some of my stories really began. I began to learn from the people around me, from the examples of people. Finally, in 1966, I got ordained a priest. And it's just interesting, because the parish I am from in Camden is Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church. And that's where I got ordained in 1966. And I was probably one of 16 people that got ordained that day. But also, I was the first person in our parish to get ordained. And the parish was over 70 years old. I guess Italians don't develop too many priests back then. So I was the first person. So as a result, like typical, they gave me one hell of a shindig. And I'll tell you another story that comes from all this. When I got ordained, I had to say 2 first masses because of so many people. And the gentleman that catered the whole entire event was Oletto's in Blackwood, Mr. Oletto. And then later on, a number of years later, back in 1988, I'm sorry, when I got married, Mr. Oletto was retired. My wife and I had a special type wedding we wanted to do. So he came out of retirement and did our wedding. So he did my ordination and he did my wedding. It was a combination, 2 things together. So I learned a lot from there. But the interesting thing about getting ordained, and I'm sad in a way because my father was on the verge of dying of cancer when I got ordained. He got to see me get ordained, and he died 3 months later. And basically it was kind of a heartache for me, because my father was one of my great teachers. You know, when I was in a seminary, my father and my uncle Smitty I had an uncle Smitty because he was an Irishman who kind of got into our family somehow, I don't know. I think he came in through the back streets or something, but he got there. But the bottom line was, they would bring food up to us all the time. My father would actually bring 200 meatball sandwiches to the seminary. So all the kids would get a meatball sandwich. My father did constant stuff like that. It was totally amazing. But anyway, it was always like I was constantly doing things. So when I got ordained, this fits into my recovery. I went to the bishop. I met because you always meet with the bishop when you get ordained. And I told him, here's my control in the way I wanted it to be. I wanted him to send me to the poorest parish in the diocese and make me a prison chaplain so I could work with the downtrodden. I begged the bishop to do this. Well, the bishop back then was a little bit different. He sent me to my first parish, which was in Vineland, New Jersey. And the parish I went to was a very affluent parish, primarily Italian, practically people all moved out of the Philadelphia area. He sent me there and I wasn't too happy. He also wanted me to teach high school while I was there. So I began to teach high school. I began to get involved in that parish. And again, when I got there, I've told some of you this story before, my introduction to the priesthood, I walked into the parish and the priest that was leaving walked past me and he said, "Good luck, you poor sucker." That was my introduction to the priesthood. When I finally got found out, I was going to live with a pastor who was an alcoholic, who wasn't around too much. And so my introduction to the parish was, I had to organize everything. We didn't have a church. I had to set up 200 chairs in the hall. I had to do the portable altar, and then spend Saturday and Sunday introducing myself to the parish. So right off the bat, all of a sudden I was running a parish. Did I know what I was doing? No. You know, I've done a lot of things in my life. I run Starting Point, I ran a parish, and I did all of them by the seat of my pants. Because half the times I didn't know what I was doing. I just did it. And I learned as I went along. I come to find out in that parish also, we had no janitor. So I was told by the pastor when he was somewhat sober that I was also going to be the janitor. I also had to cut the lawn. I was in charge of all the maintenance of the place. It's amazing. You know, and don't ask me why, but I did it all. Because that's what Vince does. He takes the bull by the horn and gets it all done. But I also found out later on what I was actually doing. I was running away from me. So it was a way for me to stay busy, to basically be able to handle the stress and the anxiety. And so I went crazy in the parish, like I did so many times in my life. I organized youth basketball teams for the CYO. I organized flag football leagues. I organized a tremendous youth program. I had tons of activities and stuff going on. Besides, you know, doing all the janitorial work, running over and teaching at the high school. And at the high school, because back then priests kind of got whatever they needed. Okay, and so at the high school, I was in charge of the cheerleaders. Have no idea how I got that job, but I was the head of the cheerleaders at the high school. The girls loved it, what can I tell you? And then I also was the JV baseball coach because our JV baseball coach had a heart attack and couldn't coach anymore. I kept doing all these jobs, things to that effect, running around like a nut. The bottom line was I didn't realize it, but my stress level was about that high. And I began to use alcohol at nighttime to put myself to sleep. It was a good sedative. I got used to it, I got comfortable with it. And it was my thing I did, but I did it always in secret. Because to the outside, I had to always be on, I had to always be performing, always doing things. So finally in 1969, and I'm grateful to God, I'm grateful to how things work in this program. My journey in the priesthood was kind of hectic. I had all these activities, all these things going on, and some man, a gentleman named Morgan, came to the rectory one night. He came up to me and he said, "Come on, Father, you're coming with me." I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "Don't worry about it, get in my car." I was a little leery, I knew what we were doing, because I had a lot of control issues. But I got in the car. He took me to my first 12-step meeting in Vineland, New Jersey in 1969. The meeting was Al-Anon. And I met some very interesting people, but I went there for the wrong reason. I figured once I got to Al-Anon, these people in Al-Anon would give me the formula and the techniques to fix my pastor. Those very strange people at Al-Anon kept telling me to work on me. And I tried to explain to them I didn't need any work. I had my act all together. Couldn't you tell by all the stuff I was doing? But they were kind of persistent. They kept telling me, and I kept going to the meetings and asking why, because I think I was convinced, and Yvette knows what I mean, I think I was convinced that I was going to get the formula from them. See, they probably had it hidden somewhere. But those crazy people kept telling me the same thing. You need to slow down and work on yourself. I don't want to hear that. The good thing about Al-Anon, though, is I went for almost a year. And at the end of the year, they actually convinced me to ask for a transfer. And something came through, how patterns work in our life. The bishop then decided, I guess I had done my internship, to send me to a parish in Atlantic City, an all African-American parish, very poor parish, and also to become the county jail chaplain. Now, when I got there, I had everything wrong. I figured I'm going to go there because he's sending me there so I can fix people, save people, and rescue people. Well, the person who got rescued and taken care of was me, not them. But during that period of time, I began to be on my control stuff again. I began to do everything in the parish. And I had another priest I was living with who was the pastor, and I used to go around the neighborhood. I was going to be a crusader rabbit, and I would tell everybody, call me up any time of the day or night. No, we had no cell phones back then. But I was never home. I was out, trying to fix people, save people, take people to meetings, do all kinds of stuff. I ran all kinds of programs. I got involved in the civil rights movement. I got news for you. My rear end was going out the door. My head was going in the door. I didn't know what I was doing. The amazing part about it is the priest I was living with asked for a transfer to get away from me because he's the one who got all the phone calls of me giving the telephone number out. He got sick and tired of him never getting any sleep because of all the phone calls coming in. He finally asked to get out of there. Now I was by myself. Now I had a license. I could do whatever I wanted to do. And boy, did I go on a run. So in 1973, pushing myself and driving myself, I ended up in a psychiatric hospital with a nervous breakdown. While I was in the hospital, and we're grateful to God in this program of recovery, the doctor in the hospital, I wish I could remember his name, came up to me and he said, Vince, if you keep going the way you're going, you'll be dead by the time you're 40 years old. He said, don't you realize something? You're spiritually dead. Now, I couldn't understand. I was a priest. How could I be spiritually dead? He says, you don't understand it. But when I tell you you're spiritually dead, it means you have no idea who you are. You have no idea what you're doing. All the stuff you're doing externally is because you're scared to death to look at yourself internally. And again, I don't like them either, because I think they went to the same Al-Anon meeting those other people went to. Because again, I kept hearing this message in my head, but it took a long time to get it through this thick head of mine, that you've got to stand still, look at yourself, and take care of yourself. But see, I had no idea who I was. And that's why everything I did was external. And I was good at what I did external. I was good at running parishes. I was good at getting things done. I was good at begging for stuff. I was good at being able to talk people into donating stuff. I was running around like a crazy person. And I realized basically that's what got me in the hospital. So after I rested at the hospital, I even told the doctor I didn't really have a nervous breakdown. I just went to the hospital for a rest. Oh, okay. See, I even denied that because I know deep down inside, I don't want to look at anything past the outside. And so I got involved like a crazy person in all kinds of movements and things going on. I had the Black Panthers Party running our breakfast program. I did all kinds of stuff. I was the prison chaplain. I was fixing guys. I was working with the public defender to help guys either get out of jail or stay or get deals done. All kinds of. I was just like a rabbit running here, there, and everywhere. I even used to leave the rectory at 8 o'clock at night, drive up to New York to work with two friends of mine in New York on a project, then drive back in time to say the morning mass. Now, is that insane? But I was insane back then. Because I know deep down inside, there was this big empty hole. I had no idea who I was. But God also has plans. God works in mysterious ways. In 1976, after I'd been in that parish for 6 years, I was going through a lot of turmoil. And one of the big turmoils was, I didn't know if I wanted to be a priest, not be a priest. I had all other issues beginning to come up for me. And literally I was in AA now because I stopped drinking in 73, but I never did any work in AA. I was a classic two-stepper. Did the first and 12th step, too busy saving people. And back then we had fun because I could actually grab guys off the street, throw them in my van, we'd take them to meetings. They didn't want to go, but we took them anyway. We captured people. We did all kinds of crazy stuff back then. And yet my life was crazy and insane. I even ended up for a period of time, helping start a drug program in Atlantic City, which back then was called Narco. I found it with 2 recovering addicts. It's still there now. It's called the Johnny Brooks Center. It's named after one of the addicts that started it with me. I got all kinds of stuff involved with that. It even was my hiding place during a period of time when my life was threatened. It's just amazing some of the crazy things I found myself into. Some of the things that happened to me back then. And most of this I wrote in the book I did on my spiritual journey. I told many of the stories and stuff that I went through. But it's just amazing the way I was running and hiding. So in 76, I decided I'm going to take a leave of absence, take a break. So I told the bishop I left the diocese, went across the bridge to Philadelphia, and another priest friend of mine that was on leave had a little house in South Philly on the corner of 23rd and Moore, and basically I lived there with him for a period of time. But during that period of time, for some reason, I began to go to some AA meetings at a place in Philly called the 4021 Club. I met a gentleman there named Norm. And then Norm was another one of my angels. Norm took me to a meeting called the Mustard Seed. And Norm always gave you a mustard seed also, put in your pocket. And then Norm the next day took me to another meeting at St. Luke's Hospital in North Philly. Now, I took a leave of absence from the diocese, got involved in all these programs, went to that hospital, and I was introduced to 6 other people who informed me I was going to start a program called Starting Point. And they gave me a house in South Philadelphia. And again, don't ask me why, but I said yes to it. And I'm glad I did now. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't. But the bottom line was, now I was back on another run, I guess you call it. Now I had a house. Now, of course, when I wrote my history of starting points, you'll see it when we put it out there. You know, I talk about the first residents of the house were little four-legged creatures and little things ran up and down walls. The place was closed up for a long period of time. We had to fumigate it, we had to fix it, get it ready. And it's just amazing how all of a sudden, from that little mustard seed, things started to grow, started to be born. And we started with 6 guys in the house. Then we ended up with 12 in the house. Then we got a house down the street, next door. I mean, after the next priest left and went back, we took over that house. And slowly but surely, everything began to change. And life went from there. And I love that section of the priesthood for me because I really was, during that period of time, on a run. I really was out of control. But during that period of time also, because I put the alcohol down, I went to a new comfort. I went to food. So from 1973 to 1985, I gained 162 pounds. My life went totally out of control. I went right into my eating disorder. And it's amazing how things work. You know, I still had this confusion going on inside of me without making a decision. I also had other things going on inside of me. So I was going around giving talks on the 12 steps, giving talks on everything. I was telling everybody else how to live their life. Then one day I gave a talk somewhere in South Jersey at a small parish. And after the talk, a lady from the parish gave me a letter. In the letter she said, "Everything you said is wonderful and great. Why don't you practice what you preach?" She recommended in the letter that I go see a doctor that she worked for. She was a nurse. And I'll be honest with you, I got angry at her. I got mad at her because of some of the things she said in the letter about my hygiene, about my car, about everything else. And so I went to see the doctor to prove her wrong. Here's another God wink. That doctor that I went to see to prove that she was wrong is the doctor that worked with me, identified my eating disorder, turned my life around. And right now in my office, I'm looking at his photograph right now on the wall. I keep it there on purpose as a reminder. Because he had the courage to confront me on so many things and get me to finally understand that word spiritual and spirituality. To finally start to grow up. To finally have to begin to realize, go look at the inside of me. Now, believe me, I didn't like him at first, but he grew on me. And I realized with the grace of God and working with him, I spent so much time in my life being angry, being frustrated, blaming everybody, blaming everything. Because really, in reality, I didn't want to know who I was or where I'm going. With his help, I was able to eventually, over a period of time, to make a major decision in my life to leave the priesthood. And the bottom line is, even after I made that decision and began to move on, I still felt guilty. And as a result of that process also, I then began to change things, change direction, change different areas in my life. And as I said before, I finally began to grow up. I had no place to live, so I went and lived in the halfway house with the guys for a while. You know, I was able to collect food stamps and I went on individual welfare for a period of time in Philadelphia. Had a trans pass to get around, had no car. So it was a new way of starting, a new way of beginning. And again, it's because I finally had somebody who had the guts to walk me through my fears, to help me to begin to look at things in a positive way. So I learned a lot, and I'm grateful. And that led me eventually to make another decision in my life. A decision to get married, a decision to make changes, a chance to be able to, you know, get three beautiful stepdaughters, grandchildren later on. And it's just amazing how all the miracles came together. But they're all based on that one word, the word faith and trust. You have faith and you believe. Everything will happen when it's supposed to happen. It will come to you when it's supposed to come to you. You know, and that's something I really believe in very deeply today. So finally in 1986, I made that final decision to leave the priesthood, to change my life, change my lifestyle. And it wasn't easy, believe me. I was scared out of my mind again. It's almost like I felt like that young kid going into the seminary, not knowing what I was going to do and how to do it. And now all of a sudden, I was going into a new way of life. I was going to walk out. And I knew when I walked out, I was scared because I never knew how to function outside the priesthood. But you got to realize, I was in that system for 32 years. A system that took care of me, that paid all my bills, that got me through school. A system that I had no responsibility, really. And as a result, when I finally left, I had to start from scratch all over again. I had to get a job. And there weren't too many places that were employing, ex-priests. That's the job market. I did odds and ends. I started starting point. I got it started. I got the houses, the guys. And thank God for them and for food stamps and things that we all got together. We were able to take care of the house and to feed people and take care of people. We always, always, always gave back. That's what's so important. And so one of the things I realized is I was now ready for another journey. It's amazing how your journey and your spiritual journey takes you through different segments and different paths, different ways of learning. Now, I learned a lot, yeah. I look back on some of the things and the stories and the things that happened back then. I remember a gentleman, God rest his soul, Charlie, who was part of my stage crew back in the seminary, never got ordained. He died before he got ordained. But Charlie was this big Irish guy that used to, smack me on the head all the time, do all kinds of crazy stuff. I love the guy. And he was the one who always went with me to when we borrowed stuff and took stuff from different places. We got to donate it. You know what it means to donate Italian style? You know what I mean? And basically Charlie would do things like that and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I'll never forget, we were doing the Passion play one time, and Charlie always, the stage crew used to wear black because we would change the scenes while the lights were out. So Charlie was out on the stage moving chairs around, dressed in black, this big Irishman. And unfortunately, the man running the lights put all the lights back on, thinking the play had started. Charlie was standing out there holding the chair, and all he did was look at that audience, a full audience for the Passion play. And I'm not going to tell you what he yelled at that guy with the lights. If I had that little thing, I'd put those things. He let out a curse word, unbelievable, and screamed and yelled, and was ready to kill the light guy. I said, oh my God, and we still remember that to this day. Standing up there in front of all those people. And, good seminary talk, what can I tell you? But the bottom line was, we got a lot of laughs. We got a lot of crazy stuff. We built a stage, a gigantic round table stage where we could turn things with the sets and everything. Then, of course, it broke off the flange and started going out into the audience. We had to catch it and bring it back. I got story after story after story of crazy stuff that happened. Staying up all night working on stuff. but we had a family, a bunch of people together. And that's the thing I want to get across to you today, because that's what I saw in Starting Point on Sunday. I saw family. I saw all of us gathered together. The fact that that's what this really is all about. I look at the walls of Starting Point, the memorial room. Now we're coming up on Memorial Day. I look at the walls. I see all these people that have gone through our place at one time or another. I say my prayers. I thank God every day for every day. I think about Memorial Day, which is a very solemn day, a day in which we honor those who have gone before us, those who have served our country that lost their lives. You know, when I lived in Holiday City, I even had the opportunity to help build a monument to them, a memorial monument to all those who died in the war and those who were injured in the war. And then every Memorial Day, I try to spend time at the memorial, remembering. But I'll talk more about that when I talk about my present life and my recovery life. But the greatest gift that was given to me on my entire journey in the priesthood was the gift of being introduced to recovery, being given the gift of the 12 steps, and being able to meet so many fantastically wonderful people from the walls of the rooms of the Atlantic City Clubhouse to the walls of the South Philly Clubhouse, the 4021 Club, all these old timers, all these people, all they did was give, 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 give. And what we're seeing in Starting Point now is how they gave of their time to get this started, to get things off the ground, to get moving, and having fun while they did it. You know, and I'm not going to go through all the stories because I got plenty of them in that when I wrote the history of Starting Point. You can check them all out. But, you know, we had a guy from AA that worked at the Acme, and at the end of the night, he would tell me, back the station wagon up to the back of my house of the Acme, and I'll make believe you're a dumpster. And he dumped all the food they were getting rid of in the back of the station wagon. We picked up stuff like that all over the city. We did all kinds of crazy things. But the beautiful part about it was we experienced the love, the connection to one another. You know, one of the beautiful things that happen to us even now, if you come through the doors here, our building at 1739th Street and 1741 were being demolished. So one of our friends of Starting Point, you know, Jerome, decided to go over there at 1 o'clock in the morning and make sure he got one of the bricks from the building. He brought the brick to me as a gift. I'll tell you, I cherish that gift. I really do to this day. So we had it encased, and it sits in the front of Starting Point, a brick from the original building. That was such a powerful birthday gift I got from him. And I'll never forget that. Because for me, I love memories, and memories are important. Stories are important. Things we connected with are important. I just met a seminarian friend of mine who's now a priest, who I live with at Mount St. Mary's Seminary, you know, and an interesting character. He was my roommate. And he was, I mean, you're looking at somebody, I did very little studying, and he did tons of studying. He was a brilliant man, you know. We used to have so much fun with him, though. You know, and the dormitory, we had two gigantic statues of the Blessed Mother and St. Joseph. And of course, they rang the bell at 5:30 in the morning to wake you up. We had to be in chapel by 6. So we got dressed, and Abe was always late. So we actually moved the statues in front of his door so he couldn't get out. So when he went to run down to the chapel, he opened the door, and the Blessed Mother was staring at him right at the front door. He couldn't get out because he couldn't. It took 3 of us to move it there. I knew he wasn't going to move it, which meant he missed chapel and got in trouble. And of course, we got in trouble too. I'm always getting in trouble, what can I tell you? But we had fun. We celebrated. We went through hard times, and beautiful times. And that's what the journey of life really is all about. We all have our patterns, we have our things. You know, why did the bishop send me to that parish? So I can meet Morgan, so I can go to a meeting, so I can start my journey in recovery. Why did I struggle with the priesthood? So maybe it's because I was supposed to start starting point. Everything kind of patterns itself and comes where it's supposed to go. And I don't know the answers to all this. I do know it's a journey. And that's one of the reasons why, while I still have this thing working up here, I wanted to write a 3 or 4 page history of starting point and then make it available to you so we don't forget where it came from. Things can move on. We go in new ways. You know, we got technology, different types of things, but at least to be open to new and be open to new directions. And so that was part of my journey. I'll finish this series next week, and then we'll do a conversation about it, you know, by talking about my recovery years. Because I really believe the journey of recovery took me to where I am today, and I'm grateful for all of that. So let's just pray in gratitude for the things we go through and for the things we go today. And by the way, my wife had said to me after we got married, she actually said to me, if I had known you back then, you would have scared me half to death, all the stuff you were involved in. I said, okay, well, that was then, now it's now. So it's all part of the journey we go through in life. So let us pray. God, we come before you in gratitude. We come before you in love. We're so grateful, all of us, to be able to be open to the different levels of things we've learned in the course of our journey. Teach us that our experiences are so special and so beautiful. Teach us not to be afraid to share the gift of ourselves. And in sharing, we grow. In sharing, we learn. And being connected to one another is a beautiful way to develop our own story and our own life. And so we come together today to be able to just say thank you. As we celebrate this weekend, we ask God to bless and guide in gratitude all those who gave of their life in service to others. And realize that so many of us, in doing service, are being able to experience the beauty of life as we do service to each other and learn and grow from one another. And so we pray and ask your guidance, your direction, and as you be with us in all that we do. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.